It's been a while, and I thought I would make an appearance once more. And in terms of subjects and what it is that I like to address, I'm just going to ramble here. I've been thinking about repeating myself as much as anything in terms of when I post. And there are certain things, obviously, that are worth repeating quite a bit. Like Fukushima has blown up and we're really fucked. And how is my response? How is my own life? How has my own life changed? Well, for one thing, the art that I make, the paintings that I make, have changed substantially since the event of 3/11/11. And as in anything, we respond, we react to stuff that goes on around us. And this is something that didn't go around me. It happened halfway around the world on the other side. But I know it happened. There is no doubt in my mind that it happened. And it's referred to in reports, and reports that minimize the significance of the event. But what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to reflect on, is something that I suppose, again, there's like we search for words that reflect the time that we live in. This is something, artistically speaking, it's called the Zeitgeist, which is a German word that suggests there is a spirit of the time, that we live in a certain time. What time is it that we live in? What I have called this the age of fission. And it began when some real smartasses that wear white coats figured out how to split the atom, which is different from the nuclear age. It's a misnomer. The nuclear age is everything to do with what our existence is. I mean, everything is nuclear. It's the sun is, from what we understand. And I really am not going to pin myself down on what this world really is. The world is not what it appears to be. I always say this. So when I reflect on our circumstances, I'm actually having faith to some extent in what I've been told. And most of the things we've been told is a bunch of hooey. History is a bunch of hooey. It's manipulated. It's there in order to create a narrative to make sure that we are not straying from the path. Whose path? Whose path might it be? My concern has always been primarily my response to, not so much focusing on the misdeeds continuously, which is an affliction, unfortunately. On YouTube, what we have is mindless entertainment for the most part, and the other section of it is focusing on the misdeeds of others. And I suppose both have their place. We feel sometimes we need to be distracted by entertainment, all the nice dog videos and cat videos. I've laughed myself. But in the scheme of things, if everything comes down to just mindless entertainment and reporting on the misdeeds of others, there is something not quite right here. This is what I'm thinking. There's something not quite right. It's important to understand, and it's important to have a mindful thoughtfulness about who we are, the time we are in, because it affects, obviously it affects us, even if it's not directly happening to me at this time. The radiation out of this nuclear plant and all the other nuclear plants, the most devastating discovery in the history of life in the cosmos, however far this cosmos extends. I'm going to get to the space part of it too in a minute. What is real, what is not real. And the thing that you can be certain of, most certain of, and this is, I keep coming back to this notion of conscience, that we all know we all know when we're doing the wrong thing. We have a quality within us which elevates itself depending on the misdeeds or the deeds, let's just say deeds. It elevates itself to the level of misdeed. The consciousness, which is everything, is alerted to something called conscience, which says something's not right, specifically about what I'm doing. Which is why I come back to this, because it's such an unusual aspect to our nature that we continuously attempt to dismiss and discard something that is so front and center in our being. And people talk about this, maybe not as specifically and directly as I do, but it comes up just within the presentation, within a story itself, that you feel the person is motivated. Very important. Intent is very important to me, is motivated to do the right thing. So if I report on the misdeeds of the bastards, there is a fundamental goodness, a notion of goodness within this idea of exposing the bastards, because it is my way of attempting to make a difference towards a better way. So when I criticize people for being in the headlights of their story, I need to footnote this by saying that the motivation is based on conscience in the best sense. Now, there are people that use it just as entertainment purposes, like the Alex Jones quality of reporting has all to do with a narcissistic level of being in this world and using whatever is available to aggrandize himself. And this happens with quite a number of people, that they use their, what is understood to be like this intelligence, this brain. I had a conversation with a friend, and he keeps coming back to the brain, the idea of having the only thing that we have is our ability to think on some level. That makes everything work or not work. Well, I beg to differ. This is the curious part of this side to us that is not represented by thought. To do the right thing does not originate in thinking necessarily, although it is very important to be able to be thoughtful and mindful about looking at a circumstance and then understanding what is the path. But this impulse within me that I'm not doing the right thing is extraordinary. I find this, and I keep repeating myself on this, it's extraordinary. And it motivates and it guides me as much as possible. I can be aware of it every day, in every moment, in my responses to people every day. And I get it wrong, and then what I do is I try to set it right. I try to do the right thing. And this is a shout out to people that get even less views than myself. I want to draw attention again to someone I really like who's been doing some interesting postings and getting minimal views. Hank McGurk on his ambient glow radio. He's actually quite clever. He's recreating a 1930s radio broadcast, and he references some of my ideas and thoughts. I appreciate that, and he has his own insights that are quite, I think, quite phenomenal. I think this person has a younger person. Well, everybody's these days is almost everybody's younger than myself. So I see myself as in relation to everyone else. As I used to always see everybody as older. Now, I don't know when this started, but everybody's younger than me. And another person is Deborah Mamoudi. I haven't heard from her. She hasn't posted lately. An extraordinary woman who has come out on this platform and defended children, which is the most important activity, as far as everything comes back to that trying to make a difference for the better is fundamentally trying to make the lives of children better, because when that happens in a collective sense, we're going to have a utopia here, because if the children are not afflicted with our misdeeds, there is obviously a possibility of having a vision for a future that is what I can understand to be much more wholesome. This is so important. I'm not sure how to express this other than to say the lives of children are the most important consideration in everything and anything that we do, because this is the future. If there is such a thing as a feeling within us of a continuity, and I've said this many times as well, the idea of continuity being in a micro sense, us every day going to the next generation, and a kind of macro sense of continuity in terms of what I consider to be eternity. And I'm not going to get caught up in a discussion of a deity. This is separate from the idea of having any kind of veneration towards a singular entity as a deity, although it does seem to be in our nature to isolate our being, our higher self, into some projection that might be the omnipotent being in some way. But I prefer to see it as a continuity within. We are within this continuity. We exist. We don't have a soul. We exist within a soul. And our individuation is an attempt to clarify this feeling, this notion that I have, that I'm part of something, a mystery that is inexplicable, that creates enormous doubt in so many ways. It unnerves us. The idea of being part of something we can't understand makes us antsy. I feel antsy about that. I mean, I look around myself and I am just overwhelmed. I mean, this feeling is overwhelming. This sense of this mystery is overwhelming. And my reflections are generally for people that have come to this sense of the zeitgeist in their own way, of understanding the times that they live in. And this can be on a whole range of different issues. It's not just one single issue. I just feel that the age of fission represents the worst of this age. The idea of postmodernism, as Wolfgang Pauli once said, it's not even false. I came across this through Noam Chomsky, who I go back to sometimes, but Noam Chomsky has dropped the ball on the most important thing. He thinks that the buildings on 9/11 just fell down from airplanes hitting it, which is ridiculous. Everybody has disproved, the engineers have disproved this notion. Airline pilots have come out and say you cannot fly a plane like that with such accuracy. The thing that went into the Pentagon wasn't a plane. So all these stories that Noam kind of, what did he do? He well, the conspiracist, like he's got a real horror about being labeled, I suppose, within a system that has fed him, MIT. He's been feeding off the beast for 50, 60 years. So how is he going to adjust? I suppose he'd have to have a major mental breakdown if he understood how he's been fed by the beast. And then, of course, 9/11, we're all a bunch of nutbags who say it didn't happen the way they say it happened. The world is not what it appears to be. And somebody as in mindful, and here I come back to this, the idea of mindful intelligence is not something that intelligence, more than mindfulness, is not something that allows us to make the right choice. Do you see in the case of Chomsky what I'm saying, that he's dismissing people like myself and a lot of other people who understand that these buildings did not fall into their own footprint by a couple of planes hitting it, and retards with box cutters supposedly did it. Yeah, think of those, those brown people out there that are trying to destroy us all. Trudeau actually once said early in his prime ministerial career in the 70s that the concern is not from the east or war from the east, but it's the destruction coming from the south. And what he was, I think what he was referring to, he was part of the clique, he was part of the clan, part of the winning team. He understood that there was an agenda to homogenize civilizations into large cities. And the way to do that is to bring in a lot of immigrants, to bring people in. And Trudeau understood this. So our society is fundamentally under threat now, not because a person should not have the right to exist, but to destabilize areas on the planet to create a diaspora for people to want to leave. This is by design. So people who are human rights activists should understand this is all by design, because why should so many people want to leave a place? See, they're perfectly happy with living in a desert that they're used to, but if you come in and you throw bombs with drones, they're going to want to leave, and that's the idea. That's why it's happening. I guess I'm kind of rambling on about things, and doing the right thing always underlies everything. And my notion of existence and being connected to something is fundamentally tied to this idea. So when I reflect on their story, what I'm motivated is to create my own story, which is why I make paintings. And I think this is very crucial. People that understand this idea, it's not enough just to expose the bastards, but it's to create our own story. This needs to go hand in hand. And in fact, our story needs to rise more than their misdeeds and the stories we're exposing. This is what I've always said. When I say we need to tell our own story, this is fundamentally my notion here. Where am I going with this? I think that this is sort of how I see things going forward. We have to identify the lies, always. The lies in the sense of, as I say, the world is not what it appears to be. Let's say there wasn't even a lie, but to come to some understanding of our connection to this mystery in a more what, real way, not just sort of like fabrications that are being imposed on us by the white coats who are running the joint now. Well, the white coats are just front men for the owners who've understood something. They don't know anything, but they know how to manipulate. So what happens is the stories they create, biblical stories or interpretations of this fascinating book. The Bible is a fascinating book. It is basically a numerical book, because the original scriptures were also numbers, not words. So we're looking at a history told through equations. And these equations are fascinating when you get into Kabbalah. I've mentioned that I've looked into Kabbalah, and it makes sense to me. But to establish a reality for ourselves, number one, requires this recognition. It's purely a recognition. It's not something that you have to invent or create in oneself, in myself, in anyone else. Is this idea of doing the right thing, what is understood to be conscience. So a recognition of this element in us is absolutely crucial to devise, to understand how we are part of this mystery, because it's the one thing about consciousness that appears to separate us from every other kind of life around us. And I don't know how whales feel, how they, so I'm not going to comment on what other beings may experience, but being human, I understand I'm no different from anybody else, and I have this understanding, this ability, this knowledge. So how do I proceed every day in order for me to function without being overwhelmed, as an example? Because the misdeeds that are occurring all around us will escalate and increase as more and more collectively become aware of the sense of this inner knowing of right and wrong, not imposed through some bunch of rules. And they left out a lot of good rules, do not rape and abuse and children. It's like, where was God on the, that should have been like okay, give him the first 3 commandments, and number 4 is like, do not abuse or rape or murder children. I mean, where is that commandment? That would have made it a lot easier on everybody, especially those sissies in dresses who seem to get a dispensation from the Holy See whenever is necessary. There's another charlatan, a whole organization based on the world. Let us tell you what the world is rather than what it truly may be. And I say maybe because I'm not definitive on what it actually is that we're existing in. This is part of the mystery. It's unnerving, but there it is. I have to deal with it. I'll deal with it the best I can, which is why I make my work. So if we take this fundamental notion, and I see myself in a collective of people that are so dedicated, even without necessarily identifying the way I am identifying this through conscience, but they have this impulse, this quality of wanting to do the right thing. And I recognize this. And it's being threatened, obviously, because as we grow into this, there's going to be enormous opposition to comply, because when people make their decisions on something, the system we understand to be civilization is under threat. As soon as we begin to realize that our story supersedes their story, obviously that system of storytelling is under threat. And I really see, I mean, my comments on postmodernism. Postmodernism is absolutely a perfect rendering of this. As Pauli said, it's not even false. The postmodernism truly represents, from an artistic point of view primarily, the degeneracy, this feeling that civilization is kind of like has become a biomechanical interface. This is how I see postmodernism, that there is an acceptance of a biomechanical interface on something that is fundamentally contrary to our nature. Something is getting impregnated into us that is not part of our nature. That is how I see postmodernism. So when I talk about museums showing the same usual suspect, or people that may not have Ai Weiwei behind their work, like that this is somebody else, they all look the same. All the stuff that is now being presented in museums, generally speaking, all looks the same. It's being homogenized. Our expression, our creativity is being hijacked into homogenous world views represented through the art. And art always seems to be very important to people that have a lot of money. I guess, I don't know if, you know, if art was selling for, if a Van Gogh was selling for $50, whether anybody would actually buy it. It would just sit there because it's not important. Unless it's 50 million, it's not important. So what should happen is all this work, we need an incredible amnesia to occur, and then everything is like priced at $50. And then all of a sudden, the owners don't have a leg on anymore, because it's up to us to decide whether something is valuable or not. We don't have to look for someone else's reference and stamp of approval. This is something I find in my own work, that unless you have some sort of story that makes you credible in the work that you're doing, you're not taken seriously. I'm running into this now, I think, with my show coming up. There is, I'm getting some exposure to people that are very wealthy, but they discard my work because it's not $100,000 to start. It's like affordable. It's affordable. I can actually, like somebody that has a normal job can afford this, so the work can't be any good. So, okay, do I have more thoughts? And yeah, I wrote down personal responsibility is the thing I'm going on here, because I'm sort of assuming that people that watch me appreciate this kind of what I call random kind of insights. But I'm repeating myself in many ways, but I want to articulate this hopeful feeling that I want to pass on, that I have fundamental, I have this hopefulness still within me that this can actually work, because the world is not what it appears to be, applies to every single notion that I have. So I'm open to considering that, like people have said, nuclear is a hoax. Well, I'm willing to consider that if you show me how it's a hoax. I will more than be happy. And don't give me Windsor Gale and swimming in the fool pool, because that's not proof. Because there is much more substantial proof that over the last 70 years, the incredible epic increases in cancer by a factor of in the population. How do you explain this? And it's not just Agent Orange and other chemicals. There is a ubiquitousness of some toxic element released, and what's most likely this element is the continuous releases of nuclear toxic elements out of these monster plants. But I'm willing to consider if somebody, oh, hoax this, hoax that. Yeah, I mean, if you're a person that I can take at their word, you know, this is very important to me, the honesty in a person, not just a spectacled person. I reference again, I mean, all the usual suspects from the news agencies and whatever it comes from, the official channels and even the alternate channels like the Jones character or the SGT religious fanatical types and the LaRouche camp and a lot of people that are very fanatical about the world as they believe it to be. And belief is everything here. Belief, the word belief is everything here. So my notion of reality is questioned every day on some level. Although I am always aware that there is, if a misdeed is occurring, I can definitively say this doesn't work and this is wrong. This is a lie. So we need to have that personal responsibility. I think I'm going to wrap it up here. You know, the idea that civilization in the postmodern system is biomechanical interface is something that's quite disturbing, and it's coming more and more to life through the gender wars. And I'm not talking about men-women wars. I'm talking about gender war in the sense that there is confusion about what is my gender, who am I as a person. This is extremely debilitating. I think the notion that well, the gay straight argument is one part of it, although it's never been so detrimental to our psyches, because what I talked about in my last video about having doubt, there is certain doubt that is extremely debilitating to our nature. I live with uncertainty. This is what I'm talking about in this whole video. The idea of uncertainty is just natural to our circumstances. This uncertainty is part of everyday life. But doubt, something that is instilled in us through external intent, and this is what I see as the gender wars. Having to decide what gender you are is extremely debilitating. I think it's and it's not a matter of gay or straight. The LGBTQTNT, no D, and no designation even. This is insane. This is crazy. And there's I'm going to reference just a thing, a guy called, probably people have heard of this guy, Rufus Wainwright, recently wrote an opera. It's being produced by the Canadian Opera Company. It's called Hadrian. And this is a very sensitive thing to talk about, because it is not so much, okay, he was married to Leonard Cohen's daughter, and they had a daughter, and then he switched teams to go, he's gay, he's married gay, and he's bringing up the daughter, and okay, whatever their lifestyle, whatever that is, you know, don't trouble me with your lifestyle. Live your life. I'm not interested in that part of it, except, and here's my problem. He's written an opera, and it's Hadrian and his unrequited love affair with some Greek youth that was 30 years younger. So here you have a degenerate emperor, Hadrian, who is distracted from his depravities by being in love with a youth. And of course we hear, and again, I don't believe any of this hooey history about Greeks and their, what was it called? The higher sexual love was to be in love with a youth, with a boy. I mean, how degenerate can you actually get to inculcate an innocent life in your proclivities. You know, let this innocent life have a chance to grow up and say yes or no. So it's disgusting. So this Hadrian thing, to me, is again a propagation of this doubt. And this doubt is being perpetrated on us. And this Wainwright guy gives me the EBGBs. And the Leonard Cohen guy gives me the EBGBs. Yeah, Canadians, you know, our local hero, our Leonard Cohen guy, another guy bit the dust for me. And his whole kind of this aura, when people have this aura that they're, what did he say? Rufus Wainwright said he was untouchable. He was like this person that was so magnificent. He was untouchable. He was a misogynist. He used women. This is all in his songs. So, I mean, what can I say? You can be attracted. You can romance the Grim Reaper, or you can romance eternity. And the Grim Reaper has nothing to do with eternity in the sense of continuity. It doesn't work. The Grim Reaper story doesn't work. The Luciferian shit, all that stuff doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not part of eternity. It's a construct that works for the degenerates that are running this show. And this Hadrian opera is going to be another one of these degenerate propositions for us. And he invokes the ancient ritual of Robaglia, or whatever it's called, Robigalia, which is, they say it's animal sacrifice, but you know, if it actually happened way back when, 2,500 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, it was child sacrifice. The same way these degenerates are still carrying on, abusing children in their ritual, biomechanical civilization, how they justify this kind of behavior, this ritualized dysfunction is being practiced, and the COC is going to put on another one of these dysfunctional individuals, this Rufus Wainwright. This is a disgusting individual as far as I'm concerned, and let him have his life, whatever he wants, but don't propagate it in the public domain the way they do. You see, I have a right to truly criticize this person because he's being promoted as an icon who was attached to another icon called Leonard Cohen. He married his daughter for a couple of years or whatever, had a child, and now he's hooked up with his boyfriend and he's bringing up the child. But don't put it into a goddamn opera. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to see it. I want to see something that is uplifting. And don't be fooled. Whatever it is that they create to be uplifting for you and me with a conscience is a bunch of hooey. It's not gonna. It's not gonna work. It's yeah. I guess I'll end it there. Yeah, I'm again talking about their story, but it gives me impetus and motivation to do what I do, and I think this is again this is very random. This is like truly random, spontaneous insights from the studio, because I understand I'm doing less videos because I don't want to repeat myself. And there are some great people out there that are continuously, like Dana Durnford and Lonnie Clark, and people that are continuously hammering away at giving us the nuts and bolts of the destruction that is being perpetrated. And Lonnie has her own way. She kind of goes into the whole Trump issue as well. And Trump is all part of this this conflation, this how the world, how they would like the world to appear, the opposition, like he's in opposition. No, he's part of the whole construct that is going to derail us into a very dark place if we go along with that whole notion. We got to develop our own story, people. We have to develop our own story, which primarily starts by not accepting theirs. And that's everything. There is no sacred cow here. The ball earth, the flat earth, space, GPS systems, satellites, NASA, SpaceX, the biggest hoax, the biggest hoax by the village retard, the village idiot, Elon Musk, somebody who has a speech defect, the way he talks like a broken speech. I think he's dyslexic. They picked a dyslexic guy to front for SpaceX. I mean, insane, totally crazy. It is so obvious this guy is completely out of his gourd. There's no way he's, you know, a guy that creates flamethrowers and sends cars into space, into orbit around Mars. He's planning to do it. These ridiculous stories. So, and just to end on my notion of space and the ball and flat and all of that, I honestly don't know. I don't know what it is, but I do know it's not what they're telling us, that it's a ball with this mysterious force called gravity taking care of all the questions we have. Just shut the fuck up. Just listen to our explanation and shut up. We call it gravity. Everything works on that. And these fast planes that can fly over the earth at 2,200 miles an hour, but never dip their nose down because the curve after 2,200 miles is like 550 miles. So he's 550 miles out in space. If he travels 2,200 miles an hour, he has to dip his nose down continuously in order not to go off. But no, gravity takes care of all of that perfectly. So there is no space out there. I'm much more inclined to have a vision of this. This is interesting too. I'll spend another couple of minutes on this. The notion of the firmament, the waters above, the waters below, and notice I've called Dana Durnford spirit on the water, and people don't really understand this yet. It's a reference to someone who is literally on the water exploring the destruction that has occurred from this Fukushima nuclear plant blowing up. What is the state of the Pacific? And it's not good. And the nature of his research just motivated me to call him our spirit on the water. Anyway, the idea of the waters above and below and the firmament, something that makes a lot of sense to me. Number one, there is no space. And the white coats know they can't get out of this bubble. Whatever we're in, and they're creating elaborate stories about Van Allen belts. It's all a bunch of hooey. There is no Van Allen belts. However, there is electromagnetism. And whichever way this dome may be constructed, there may be some reference to an electromagnetic force that keeps things where they are over an extended, possibly infinite plane that moves, that undulates into many different what would be considered planets. This is very feasible to me. This is a very possible thing. And people that are out there saying, well, how can an intelligent person like you actually deny that we live on a ball? Well, the evidence that does not support their story is overwhelming. Like if you begin to look at this, okay, if it is a ball, give us the right explanation, and then I'll have a look at it and say, yeah, okay, you're right. So even people that are very dedicated to their intelligence, that allows their intelligence to rule their life, well, just look at your conscience and just honestly put aside all the supposed intelligence and just feel what's right here. What's right? If we're being lied to on every level, but oh no, the ball thing is fine. The white coats tell us everything. Nuclear is a great invention. It's against, the hoax, global warming has changed to climate change because it's no longer suitable, because maybe what is understood to be the sun is actually creating a possible coolerness, or the weather changes are not from... this is getting too far. I don't want to get into this. This may be another dissertation. Anyway, we need to question everything, especially all the established notions of who we are, what we exist in, because it's a bloody mystery and it creates anxiety. Understand this, and people get antsy really easy. The ability to bear this frustration is very low in most people, to the point where you sit back on your TV, eat your chips, eat your pretzels, whatever, and you say, I don't want to hear it. Well, I'm going to remind you in my work at every opportunity, and don't underestimate eternity. It has nothing to do with the Grim Reaper. It has everything to do with you and me. My best to everybody, honestly.